Chateau de Razac. I'm stood outside the manor house. We haven't been particularly active on social media over the last couple of months. There's been a few different reasons for that. One is that we wanted to get our minds and a schedule of works in place so that we can understand exactly where we're going. We did launch our Chateau YouTube channel fairly early, and we didn't really realise how much of an interaction we would get. So I do apologise for not being able to be so active on social media. It's something that we are about to change. However, we are just a family doing some work together. So it's about a fine balance between actually getting some work done so we've got somewhere to live, and also trying to keep you guys happy too. So please bear with us, and we hope that we'll provide you with some content that you'll begin to enjoy. You will have seen that there has been a couple of small YouTube videos that my children have posted with my father in them. They came down a couple of weeks ago to look at the drainage and some various other bits and pieces. We've now pushed forward from that. I'm down here for a month, and the intention is to move forward with preparing the manor for us to live in. So we're kind of camping inside the manor at the moment. We woke up yesterday morning with no electricity. We had planned to have no electricity while we were moving over our electrical circuits into a new electrical board. However, the town is actually also down with electric now, so we're now day 2 with no electrics. But what we're going to do is we're going to provide you with a video of the manor house, which will give you a bit more incentive. So the chateau is over here in the back, towards the south of the site, and what we're going to be concentrating on over the next couple of months is getting this place livable for us. The manor house is obviously here to the right. The kitchen is based within the barn, or within a section. We think that in the 80s someone had removed the carriage doors and created the kitchen into the barn. We're keeping the kitchen where it is, but it was very dated, and the works, the drainage didn't comply to the current regulations. So there was various things that we needed to change. So we went from the idea of replacing the units and basically putting a new kitchen in, to actually gutting the shell. So there's concrete walls in there. It's a square box within the actual barn itself, and it's part of the barn. So our idea has been to gut the kitchen and renew it from scratch. We're putting new electrics in throughout the manor house because the electrics have no earth, and there's been some add-ons and changes over the last 20 or 30 years, and our electrician just wasn't happy with the electrics. So the idea is we're having new electrics. Where we have external walls and we're bringing electrics in, we have racked, or we're about to rack, insulate, plasterboard, and then plaster the walls internally. So we're increasing the U values, the insulation values on the manor house itself. And next year, when we can get the roof renewed, the roof will have insulation along with new tiles, so on and so forth. We're replacing 3 windows, and we're hoping the rest will be able to be restored. We've got this window, the fanlight window above the doors in the kitchen. The doors in the kitchen are being renewed. The central doorway is being replaced, and also the doors in the living room. The other windows are in reasonable condition, and yes, they are still single glazed. My intention is to try and restore them. We've got one window in here that's fairly old, the one to the left of the doors, which we're thinking it's probably at least well over 100 years old. So this particular window and the one above, we're going to do our best to keep. We'll be taking those out next year when the weather's a bit warmer so that we can still live here. As we walk you through, you'll see that we are living in a building site, and you'll see why our YouTube channel hasn't been kind of high on our list, should I say. So in the kitchen, what we've done is we've taken out the units, we've stripped back, we started to re-rack. They use a metal racking system here in France because of things like woodworm, and there's a few different larger beetles. And they tend to use a lot of greenwood here, so it hasn't been dried. So we've opted for the metal racking. So that's going on the external walls so that we can add insulation to the kitchen. Come and have a little look inside. Okay, so we're stood inside the kitchen. This is just a 6-inch block wall, no insulation, going off into the barn. Our intention is to block the doorway here into the barn so that there is a separation between the buildings. We will be reinstalling or creating a new doorway into a boot room later on, but that's going to be done in the future. Our main concentration is to get this livable for us. We've retained the old kitchen sink so that we had some hot water while we're doing some works. Andy yesterday was busy creating a temporary stand for a sink that we found on site that we're going to relocate temporarily in the manor house so that we can strip out the sink here and we can finish the racking and get the insulation in. The electrician has put a new fuse board in, so that's been done, although we're without electricity at the moment because the whole of the town has no electrics. That's happened twice in the last week, and then we've had a few days where we've had no electric because of the electrics being transferred over. The idea here is insulation in all the outside walls, insulation into the ceilings, then we'll come in and plasterboard. The heating engineer's been here for about 10 days now. We decided that the boiler room in the pigsties wasn't good enough, and we would be spending several thousands of pounds getting the roof sorted there when we've got more of a long-term aim for that building. So we've popped the new heating system into an old boiler room, which is directly behind the manor house, which makes more sense. There's less length in pipework going to and from the boiler, so hopefully that will reduce the amount of heat loss that we will have getting to and from the boiler. Also, once we had uncovered the relatively new boiler and we went to have it serviced, we realised that actually there was too much damage. So we've had a new boiler, our water tank has been taken out of what was the utility room and also put into the boiler room. So now we'll have a room which will just have all the heating and hot water in, which will make much more sense. We've knocked down the wall here because this room was divided into two, and we are now creating an open plan kitchen with a dining room in the front part, and then the formal dining room will be in the manor itself. Excuse me. We're going to have a large range at the back of the kitchen. Where the sink is now is where it's going again. Andy's going to be creating a larder type fridge cupboard which will have a fridge, a small freezer, and then a larder cupboard for us to store some bits. We're trying to keep the kitchen relatively simple, and then on the left hand side there'll be a dresser style that will fit the sink, and hopefully it will look pretty good. We're using, I think it's chestnut wood, and he'll be making that in the barn over the next couple of weeks. So it's all going here at the moment. The electrician does 3 to 4 days a week, so we'll be working with him, and hopefully he'll be able to get us up to speed at the same speed at which we're trying to push along. So because the kitchen is an extension, we want to try and create some authenticity. So this wall here would have previously been the exterior wall of the manor house, and then at a later date they then built and attached a barn on. This was rendered and then plastered, and we've started to expose the stonework. The stonework is in relatively good condition, so what our intention is now that we've got rid of most of the render, is to go in and remove the pointing and have the stonework repointed and the stone kind of cleaned up so that we can have a feature wall within the kitchen. So now I'm stood inside the larger area proportion of the barn, where the kitchen is now just to my right. We're going to be blocking up this doorway because I have further ideas for this barn. And as you can see, it's been left pretty, works had started with the previous owner and then had given up. So we do need to do some work in here, but it's all stable. We're happy with how it is. We will be losing that view from the kitchen, from that doorway. However, there's plenty of other views on the estate. As we go through the barn doors here, we'll show you the back where the pigsties were and the new boiler room. So, the old pigsties were here, part of it's collapsed. There was the boiler room which the previous owner had installed under the poor roof. That now we're pretending isn't there at the moment, and we're concentrating on getting this set up. We created a trench the other day so that we have a new gas main coming in from the gas tank, which then leads back into the new but old boiler room. David's been working quite hard in here for the last 10 days or so, and now we have a new heating system being installed. So we had a damaged downpipe from the gutters, which we couldn't quite understand where the water was coming from in the old boiler room. However, that's been changed. We've got a temporary downpipe that's just been placed onto the roof. When the roof gets renewed next year, the downpipes will be recorrected and rerouted. David's had to put a new flue in for the boiler, and we have this gas main now coming in down to the gas tank. We're hoping that we'll have some gas delivered in the next week, and maybe we'll have some heating. It's -1 here today, and it's probably about the same in the house. I'm going to introduce you to David, our heating engineer. David is originally from Nantes, but lives in the Dordogne.
Yeah. And by what we are doing, the previous boiler was in the other room that you showed up previously, and now we are installing it here to warm up the Manoir. So that's a gas condensation boiler, and we have to dig a trench to bring the gas up to the boiler, and making all the piping through this big wall to go into the kitchen to feed all the radiators in the house. And I think it's time that he has to work now because it's a bit cold. So we're working on it, and pleased to work in Razak, place that I didn't know before. So really happy about that.
So we're now stood in the dining room of the manor. This would have been the original main room of the manor house, and at some point, probably in the 19th century, there was an extension put to the right, which is now the living room. We have the fire going, and we've got these lamps at the moment which are battery powered, which I found on eBay. Had a bit of a different idea, found them in the cupboard the other day, so now that we've got no electric, that's kind of what's keeping us with a little bit of light. We are using this as a bit of a temporary kitchen. We've got an induction hob that when we have electric is working from that, and our heating at the moment is just our fire. So we do look quite messy, but things will change. Through here is the old kitchen, which Charlton has been busy yesterday taking down a partition wall because we've got something a little bit different that we want to use it for. It's probably going to be a little bit of a snug area. So there was a wall here yesterday with a doorway, and then there was a corridor going down and out through into the kitchen that I just showed you. The idea here is to put a new studwork wall up, keeping this door, but relocating it, and altering the washing machine and the tumble dryer so that they will be in a small WC for now until we do the boot room. The idea here is we've removed, there was a very low ceiling in here, so now we've come up to the same height as the rest of the house. So in the 1980s they would have used a suspended tile here, which was held on a metal, just a piece of wire basically with a screw, with a nail, and then they would lay one tile which kind of interlocked in the other, and then what they would do is place the metal cable in between the join and cement in, and then this created a false ceiling, or a suspended ceiling basically. Obviously technology's advanced much more since the 70s and 80s, and now we're using metal frames and various other things. So we've taken that ceiling out, we've exposed the beams. They're not in the best of conditions. We're going to try and keep some. We're still really working on the ideas of what we're going to do here, but my intention here is this will be a separate room from the formal dining room, a separate room from the kitchen, but somewhere where maybe we can have a bookshelf and a couple of chairs, and yeah, it will be a pass-through basically. David had moved a radiator. There was a radiator on this wall here. That's now back on where it should be really, and moved a couple of pipes here so that the evacuation of the sewage is ready for our new system later on in the year. We're going to put a temporary sink just here so that we've got some hot water and we can do our dishes, because at the moment we're doing them in the old kitchen, and that unit is preventing us from moving forward in the kitchen. So we are kind of hopping a little bit room by room. So this is the official living room. It's a mess. We've got the fire going just to try and keep the house a little bit warmer. We've got new cables being rerouted through, holes in the walls and various other things, because we need to get the services in. The walls in here are exposed stone, so we don't really want to be chasing it out and trying to get electrics into the pointing. The idea here is that we'll probably use some form of copper pipe or authentic pipe, which will run round the perimeter of the building and then drop down to where we want sockets and lights. We're still in the early stages of understanding the material that we can use. It's a little bit different to what we can source in the UK, so I'm just waiting for some samples to arrive. We're hoping that this room won't get as disrupted as the rest of the house, because actually there's not an awful lot wrong with it apart from a new set of windows, and the electrics are no good. So the boys have been down with my father and they've been looking at the drains. They came in and they stripped out the ceiling. There was polystyrene stuck to the floorboards. That would have been used as an insulation and some form of acoustic insulation, which really doesn't do too much. So we've removed that. We've now exposed that. Andy, over the last couple of days, has lifted the boards, has repacked them out. So the middle bedroom, the floorboards were unstable because there had been some movement with one of the beams, probably 80 or 90 years ago, a long time ago. That was stabilized, but the actual floorboards were never corrected. So as much as there's still a good fall in the floorboards, nobody's going to be tripping over, and that was our main concern. So that's been done. The idea here is to rack in between the beams. So we'll put some metal framing on the beams, and then we can put some insulation in. We can run our electrics through, and then we'll plasterboard in between. So the idea is to keep the beams exposed, to keep the authenticity and the character, but also allowing us to modernize the building. There's a really interesting balustrade here, which we believe may have come from the original chapel, which was on the site originally. We believe that building collapsed in the 80s. It's somewhere down on the south side, just past the chateau. We haven't found it, but one thing I did look when I was looking at the geoportal, which is a bit like Google Maps, but you can look at the dated maps. There is an outline and a foundation, and if you zoom in on Google Maps in the summer, when the grass had died back, you could see a footprint. We believe that was the chapel. I need to go down to the archives to get more of an idea. But the balustrading here is something that we want to restore and get looking nice again, basically. This is a much newer staircase. We're going to keep it, it's serving a purpose, and it also adds to the different eras, and that's one thing that I think is important here, is to try and keep some of the history, well, keep the history as much as we can, but also, you know, this is probably a 1980s staircase, so that's lending itself to the history of the 1980s, and so on and so forth. We're going to keep these floorboards exposed, sand them down and probably wax them, and then we will be re-plastering the walls in here because there's been leaks and various other things, and it's going to be much easier and a much cleaner job for us to just re-plaster. So we're now at we're now just above the dining room. The previous owners have done the bathrooms up. We're not really making too many changes to the bathrooms for a simple reason: they're serving a purpose and possibly not quite to my taste, but they're doing what they need to do. In here, this is one of the original bedrooms. This had a very dark red insulated material on the walls, which when Charlton and I arrived 2 weeks ago, we removed that, and there was also another suspended ceiling where all the old electrics were running through. We removed that as well. We've now got the new racking in place. We've also got the new electrics in place. So the idea now is over the next 2 weeks, we will be putting the insulation in and also starting to plasterboard some areas so that we can start to feel a little bit warmer and press on. We have a leak here up on the valley where the new kitchen, and which is in the barn, meets the old manor house. Now, Richard did look at that 10 days ago, but because we hadn't had any recent rain, we couldn't locate the leak. Yesterday we had the worst weather ever, and we've managed to locate the leak up in the roof space. Charlton will add a video to that so that you can see that. So this is the racking. We've also got the plumbing coming in, ready for the radiators, so we're hoping that maybe this week, next week, we should have some heating. Through here is one of the old doors, which lends itself into the first floor of the barn, which is above the kitchen. And you can stay there, and we'll just let you have a little sneak peek. Again, we have different ideas for this barn at the moment. The intention here right now is to get the actual houses on the estate. There are 7 houses on the property, including the chateau, and our main intention is to get these dry or stable. One of the properties, which is called the Portuguese house, that part of its roof was about to collapse, and that we've been doing that type of work to secure the roofs on the estate, because once the roofs go, the value of the buildings drop, and there's a significant financial impact in then obviously getting these buildings back up and running. So there's various things we've been doing without recording, and that's purely because once we got the purchase and the purchase has gone through, we wanted to press on and do that. I'm also working back in Jersey, so I'm not here full time. So it's a bit difficult. It's been a bit difficult for us to actually keep on top of the recordings and also making sure that things are just getting done. This is another bedroom. This floor has been rebalanced. You can still see there's some light in there coming up from the dining room. We're racking, or that has now been racked for the beds, the new electrics by the bed, Wi-Fi, so on and so forth. We're going to keep the stones exposed around the windows, and then there's some future racking going in here, and then we'll be actually concealing that beam because that beam has had some damage. It's not very attractive. We're just going to hide it basically. It's stable, it's doing its purpose. And then through here, this is where the original manor house ends. You can see the depth of the wall. It's just over, I think it's just over a metre in depth. And at some point this has been broken through, and the extension in the 19th century has been placed as an annex or a wing. We have a bedroom with ensuite and then 2 further small rooms, and then that takes us into the attic above the manor house. Andy's been in here, again, racking. We've still got some further racking to do. He's putting in backboards as well for things like televisions, for radiators, so on and so forth, so that things are stable and we're not having to think about doing them in the future. This room was actually okay. We were thinking that it was just needing some central decoration, but then because of the routing of all the new electrics, we decided that actually we just need to insulate and be done with it. This is the ensuite. Again, the previous owner has used tiles and started to do some renovation. We need to tweak the electrics in here because there's, again, no earth. We've also found some cables which were wired, which are coloured as earths but wired as lives. So it's been quite a challenge with the electrics, and hopefully we can draw a line with that by putting new electrics in and having a fully new system. We then have a small staircase which takes us up to the attic rooms. We can show you up there. We're not really doing too much up here. Our intention is just to get the first floor sorted, and then next year, once the roof has been re-roofed, we can then look at creating a different space up here. This is a bedroom with the roof trusses in and the beams. The velux all need replacing. All the electrics are going to be replaced up here, and then we'll look at redoing this, but this will be next year. There's a very small room here which I think we'll end up using as a place for things like laundry. Rack it out for things like towels, linen, and so on and so forth. So it will be a linen cupboard moving forward. So this is the roof. We have a couple of leaks. So we've got a bucket down here, which is serving a purpose at the moment. And there is one on this valley right in the corner, which we're hoping will get repaired next week. For us to press on with the kitchen, that does need to be sorted, because otherwise anything that we're doing below is going to get damaged. The intention in here, when the roof gets, when the tiles come off, the battens come off, a new membrane gets put on, and then the tiles go back, is to insulate in between the beams and turn this section into a bedroom and ensuite. So this would be like the principal bedroom of the manor house. That will happen possibly next year. We just need to get everything dry. So that concludes our little tour of the Manoir, and the sun is finally coming up. Hopefully we should get rid of the frost and we move forward with our works. I hope you've enjoyed this. It's going to be a pretty raw video because we're getting videos out because you want to see something. So I'm hoping something is better than nothing, and I look forward to showing you more of the progress. You will hopefully see more of me and the rest of the family as we come and go and the renovations continue.